It's Bob Flounders, joined by David Jones for this edition of the Blue White Breakdown podcast, PennLive's Penn State football podcast. And we got a lot to get to this week. A marquee matchup, Penn State at Iowa State. Penn State's number 4, Iowa's number 3. Huge game, huge. But first, Dave, how are you doing? What's new in Downingtown? How's the first couple days of your week going?
It looks like we're into I'm going to get into meteorological geek stuff.
Fantastic, Dave. Fantastic.
We're lapsing into a Midwestern gloom we might not see the sun all week, Bob. So just so you know, usually that I grew up in Ohio, and it can get the lake effect clouds kind of just sap down from the lake with the north over the warm water. And there was 3 weeks in November of 85 where we did not see the sun. It was so amazing and so depressing that even John Feinstein wrote about it in Season on the Brink. It just clouds over the entire Midwest. And I remember when I first met my wife, we went to the Wisconsin-Ohio State football game, and the sun came out during senior introductions because Fred was coaching at Wisconsin. And 1985, the sun came out for the first time in 18 days, and the sun got a standing ovation.
Nice. Dave, I'm going to make a note to myself to never ask you how you're doing at the start of the podcast. Just so you know, I'm never going to ever ask you how you're doing.
Okay. That was a James Franklin. That was a James Franklin response.
Straight into a ravine. That was a James Franklin filibuster. Yeah. Well done, my man. Well done.
Bob, is that a beer bottle behind you? You like beer? You like beer? That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, he's like, so you're a Cowboys fan?
Yeah.
Said, okay. I was like, yeah, okay. I am.
Okay, what's your question?
All right, Dave, we're going to talk a little bit about James Mood, some of the things he touched about this week, Iowa week, as we said. And I gotta start. I gotta pat myself on the back for successfully predicting Maryland upsetting Iowa last week in fine. Oh wait, that did not happen.
You put me in that mindset, and I was kind of on the fence, and I was like, "Oh, Bob usually knows what he's talking about. I guess I'll go along with Bob like an idiot." I forgot that Mike Loxley was coaching Maryland somehow. Yeah. Somehow that skipped my mind that they were the most penalized, most mistake-prone, most knuckleheaded team on the planet for like 3 straight years. But, why would I pay attention to that? My nephew only played quarterback for him. Why would I know that?
Lesson learned. James, I thought had a couple interesting things to say. A lot of focus on the state of Penn State's running game, the running back rotation, what ails it, what's good about it. What did you take away from? He was asked a couple different ways about the running game. I had one. I thought he said something interesting, but what kind of stood out to you about that, Dave?
Yeah, there were like 2 or 3 different questions where he dealt with it rather frankly. Yes. First of all, he said they need to establish the run in this game, not just to help the offense, but to help out the defense with possession time. Then he said he'd like the running backs to be a little more physical in runs where the optimum is only 3 or 4 or 5 yards. Yeah. And I thought that was interesting. And then I think at the end he said we gotta be able to get a yard or 2 when everyone in the stadium knows that that's what we're doing. And he was frank, he was honest. Yeah. I thought that was interesting because he's kind of putting it on those guys, everybody, offensive line, the backs. And I think everyone's kind of equally culpable, I guess is the word. I don't know.
Yeah, that he was going to do it, Dave, and it's what he's supposed to do. He tap danced a little bit around Audrey Snyder's question about maybe Noah trying to play through some things since the Auburn game. he's not, if he's not 100%, he's not going to admit it. We know that. But
Yeah.
I think, to me, when you see the best of Noah Cain, you see a guy that's always getting extra yards. You see one guy's never bringing him down. He runs through tackles. We didn't see that against Indiana. We just didn't. He didn't play against Villanova, and James did not acknowledge the Auburn game took a little bit out of him. But I would say, I don't know, on a scale of 1 to 10, Noah might have been at a 6 against Indiana. That could be generous. The first carry he had, Dave, I think he got 8 or 9 yards, but the guy, he ran into the guy and just stopped. And like, there was no forward contact. He just kind of went to the ground. And I think we both looked at each other and that's really not what we've come to expect from Noah Cain. So I just wonder what he's going to be like for the Iowa game. And I know that you in particular are a little fascinated with the way that they use Kevon Lee, even when it looks like he's got fresh legs and he's ready to run through some people. They kind of go to that rotation and you don't see him for a while.
Yeah, and Devin Ford really has not shown much of anything. I think the guy is Lee, but you're right about Cain. I mean, that first run, I think it was 9 yards. I went back and looked at it on the tape to see if I saw what I thought I saw, which it was not quite what I thought I saw. I remembered him kind of going sideways into the contact. He didn't do that, but he certainly didn't attack the contact and run through like he usually does and finish the run. And yeah, you knew right away. Plus there was a B gap off left tackle run where he just didn't have any explosion at all. I don't want to speculate, but the way he's playing reminds me of somebody who's got rib issues. That's what I said to you that night. And because it seems like it's, if a guy favors one leg or another, that's one thing. Or if he's got a shoulder injury, maybe. But this was like a guy who just did not want to absorb contact to me, and that's not Noah Cain. So I don't know what you do about it. Okay. But yeah, Kevon Lee was by far the most effective and the most aggressive through the whole for the whole game. But who knows? Maybe he doesn't think he can feature him all game, and maybe he shouldn't. Maybe after a week, Cain will be better. But it's kind of surprised me that he played Cain basically the whole fourth quarter.
Right. And the one thing that I actually found the most interesting thing I thought James said about the running game, as good as Sean Clifford has played this year as a thrower, he basically said there are times when Sean Clifford needs to get out of a run and they have built-in throws when there's too many guys in the box that are easy throws, and they're staying with the run call, and the call more often than not is doomed. I thought that was pretty interesting, and I think on the practice field this week, I think Mike Yurcich is going to be in Sean's ear about, hey, listen, you're a veteran quarterback. If they got too many guys in the box, or we have a run called into a spot on the field where they are overloaded, you got to check out of it and you got to throw the safe pass. And he said we got to throw the ball to the backs more. And I just thought that was interesting, an interesting admission. And I think that's fair game. I think that when you're a first-year quarterback or a redshirt freshman quarterback, I think it's understandable when you're not good at that. But I think after 5 years, I think the expectation is that your quarterback will get you into the right play.
You know what I thought it was interesting in all this stuff is how frank he is during press conferences. I mean, you compare this to like Belichick or any number of college coaches. I mean, how many guys expose this many thoughts? That is pretty granular and pretty inside baseball for a normal pro coach's press conference. He's never been afraid of that. He's never been paranoid about saying he's been paranoid about some things, but he's never been paranoid about expressing how he feels about things. Something else he said that we haven't dealt with about Cain is that he finally got around to with Audrey's question is hey, it's part of football. Everyone in football is working through something by this time of year. So that's kind of a little message. And a lot of coaches do that in press conferences. They dispense messages to the team or maybe even to the opponent. but very rarely do you see a guy analyze his own team's decisions and in-game decision making of players like that. That's not very normal, and it's refreshing as hell. It's terrific for us. I don't think it's detrimental at all. I think it's, look, these teams know each other very well. You've got a fascinating coordinator matchup between a couple of Cleveland guys here and Phil Parker and Mike Yursich, who, you know, they know what each other is going to do. Phil Parker's been running that defense, that quarters defense, forever. It's not like he's going to do something crazy. They might run a trick play on offense, but they know who they are. So it's just being realistic that Franklin can be honest about a lot of this stuff, because both staffs know what the other is going to do. There's nothing. There are no secrets here.
Yeah, and James, the psychologist, is also doing two things when he does this stuff. I think he is clearly aware of the narrative that the running game, all the fault is on the running backs, and you know, they need to play better. And if he feels strongly that's not the case, I think he's going to send a message to, I mean, there's a lot of people writing about Penn State football. On the Zoom cast, there were like 66 participants. And the other thing is, I don't think he wants his quarterback to get too big of a head. You know, hey, you're off to a great start throwing the football. This is the best you've ever played. You're completing 67% of your passes, 11 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. But on the other hand, you might want to get a little bit more consistent with your calls in the running game. And I think that is just James reminding everyone that let's not get a big head. We got room to grow. We're not the best versions of ourselves yet, and we got to be better if we're going to win at Kinnick Stadium.
Yeah, and I thought another interesting question was on, I can't remember who asked it, but someone was talking about Clifford's decision-making this year. Who was that? And
that was your good friend, and I think he's your personal driver. I think that's Mike Gross.
Oh, it was Gross, right. And he said,
that's your guy, Dave. It's your guy. How do you not know that?
How much is of him, and he's been able to extend plays in intelligent ways. So how much is experience of being a fifth-year senior, and how much is Yursich? And is that when he answered that question, the one you're talking about? I don't know, but
I thought that I'm glad you brought that up, because I mean, Sean has gotten not only good at that, he's gotten great at that. You know, the faking like he's going to run, pulling up, drawing the defender to him, and then it's just an easy 8 or 9 yard completion down the field. I think he might have done that when it was still a game in the Indiana game. Penn State completed. There was I think they went for it on 4th and 7, and he did that. He ran to the right side, and when the defense kind of came up, I think that's how he got Parker Washington open for that 9 yard pass. I don't know if you remember that.
No, he also did it with Dotson on the 30-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
He rolled out, drew I don't remember who the coverage was on Dotson. I'm sure it was probably a safety, and drew him up, and then fired, and he was in an open area. He does a different thing. He does a different thing than what Trace McSorley did, because McSorley more often could squirt out the front of the pocket and get clear air and get clean air. And then all of a sudden he was looking downfield. He was always looking downfield for the bomb, which, you know, he had a bunch of great receivers who could high end 50-50 balls and bring them down, especially Chris Godwin. And that's how Trace ended up as historically, he's still in the NCAA record books on yards per completion. I think he's with an incredible group of quarterbacks, Ty Detmer, Jim McMahon. It's the kid that played under Briles at Baylor. What was that kid's name? Like 2014, 2013.
RG3? RG3?
No, after Bryce Petty.
Oh yeah.
Bryce Petty. And then somebody else. I mean, it's an incredible group, and Trace is right there in the top 4, top 5. Mm-hmm. That's how he did that. Clifford doesn't do that. He goes short, And a lot of times he ejects out the side. He's not quite quick enough to split a collapsing pocket up the middle and get away with it. I wish he would just get rid of the ball quicker myself in several situations, because this is how Iowa creates turnovers. They also play this quarters defense in their secondary. They play a lot of zone compared to some, and it's not like they come on. Sometimes they play more man than they usually have. But these guys are so good at reading the quarterback's eyes, and Franklin mentioned this too, that they spend more time. They're so confident in their scheme that they spend more time looking at the quarterback's eyes than a lot of secondaries do. And if you looked at Talia Tungavaloa on his first interception, Riley Moss came off his guy because he was watching Tungavaloa. And Tungavaloa was not expecting him to be there. He was not supposed to be there. And so much of what young quarterbacks are taught to do is, okay, when I see this, this is going to happen. And you can't do that with Iowa. This is a second, third level of defensive acumen that they have. And that's why they mine all these turnovers. It's not luck. It's Phil Parker. Phil Parker's a genius at field geography and getting all these guys to cover certain areas. And they get so good at it. And are so something else that Franklin said, they're so good at down and distance and tendencies of the opponent. They've been schooled into what to expect.
Right.
They can play fast and aggressive, and they're not thinking because they know it. They know it cold. And you don't want a defense to think ever. You just want them to react and be aggressive, and that's what they do.
Let's just shift gears to the Penn State offense and the passing game, Dave, real quick, because our good friend Mark Brennan asked about Jahan Dotson, the season he's having, the season he's had dating back to the start of the 2020 season. And James went into detail about why he thinks he's such a great player and how he works at his craft, the elite ball skills. But I just want to focus on one thing. Penn State lucked into Dotson because UCLA really,
he was going to go play for Jim Mora, right?
No, he was going to go play for Chip Kelly, I think.
Oh,
I think it was Chip Kelly that said, "I don't think we want you." How long has Chip Kelly been at UCLA?
I think he was going to go play for Jim Mora. This is the way I heard it. And then they made the switch, and Kelly said, "Nah, I don't know if we want you."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So my question is, what the hell was Chip Kelly thinking?
Well, I thought Chip Kelly was a genius again. I guess not. That doesn't work out.
It was Kelly that said, you can just.
Yeah, I think you got it right. But he was going to play for Jim Mora, I believe.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I see what you're saying now.
And then they made the switch. They made the switch, and that kind of unplugged it. Yeah. Did you see the Arizona State game, by the way? You know what I don't want to get off topic here, but LSU, that LSU win was supposed to be huge for UCLA. Yeah. How good is LSU? They didn't beat Auburn. They didn't beat that team.
Yeah.
Why is the SEC so confident that they're better than everyone else? Alabama and Georgia, yeah, but the rest of the Big Ten has a real chance to get whoever's best has a chance to get in. I think even with 2 losses, and that hasn't happened before. Anyway, Jahan Dotson. I did not know I didn't know he was a high jump champion. Did you know that?
I knew he was a multi-sport athlete at Nazareth High School. I grew up in the Lehigh Valley.
I know
yes. Blue Eagles. I think he spent some time, I think, at a prep school in New Jersey, but he did play some at Nazareth and I think some in a prep school in New Jersey. But man, you saw a little bit of it when he was in 2018, his first year. You saw more of it in 2019 when he became a starter, because he didn't really start until the end of his true freshman season. 2020, it was ridiculous, starting with the Ohio State game when he just torched that corner, Wade, for 8 catches for 144 yards.
Yeah, Sean Wade.
The hands, Dave, the hands. I've never seen a college receiver consistently catch the ball the way that Jahan does. He catches, because Clifford has a strong arm, and some of those throws he's hand catching that are away from his body are lasers, and he makes it look easy. I know they have gloves on, but I just cannot say enough about his ability to catch the ball in traffic, run after the catch. He's really just an amazing player. And I just don't know. I haven't seen anyone like him since I came on the beat. And Chris Godwin was a heck of a player. I think Jahan Dotson's better. And I did not necessarily see this coming going into the 2020 season.
Yeah, I think he's improved every single year. Every single year, really. We didn't see this.
Markedly each year, consistently better.
Yeah, so there was no reason that anyone would see it coming. Who does he remind you of? A famous claymation star from the past.
Now you threw me. I'm distracted about that MTV series claymation.
He's Gumby.
Gumby. I was going to get there.
Yeah. Not Pokey. He's Gumby.
Yeah.
My God. I mean, think of all the stretching, lunging catches. Yeah. He's so easily flexible, easily elastic.
Bendy.
Franklin mentioned that. I mean, not just leaping for balls and catching them on his fingertips, but remember the one that he caught out in front of him, like this against Auburn.
Yeah.
Which is not only difficult and awkward, but dangerous. You know, it's a little bit courageous to do that in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
He doesn't care, man, in a good way. He's gotten more physical. I remember when he was playing against Shaun Wade and just kind of bumping him around last year. And I'm thinking, well, we haven't seen that before. Shaun Wade's kind of a big guy, and he's bossing him around out there. He's bodying up and doing the things that Godwin used to do when he was heavily covered. Where do you see him fitting in the NFL? Because certainly he's going to be chosen it looks like the first round, wouldn't you say?
If not the first. I mean, the thing about wide receivers, Dave, is the difference between the top 20 that are in the draft every year is very minuscule. And what I say by that is when there's not one receiver that is, like Megatron, like Calvin Johnson, who's just maybe the most physically gifted, or Randy Moss, physically gifted people ever to put on a football uniform. When there's not that much separation, teams tend to wait because they know they're going to get a really good receiver in the second or the third round. So when I think about Jahan, the fact that he does everything significantly above average, everything, but is he truly elite at one thing that at the NFL level, an evaluator is going to say, man, we got to have this guy. Maybe he is, but I think that he's probably a top 50 or top 40 player. Yeah. And if somebody falls in love with him, and if they do, they're probably smart to do it. He could absolutely go in the first round. But I just know if you just look at these wide receiver lists, there's going to be, the Alabama guys, the Ohio State guys, there's just so much, even LSU guys. There's going to be 10 or 12 of them. And I don't know that the drop off is that significant. So that's when I talk about Jahan as a college player, I think he absolutely could and should win the Biletnikoff Award. I think he absolutely, if he continues to produce, could be a Heisman invite, like an invite to the top 5 guys. If you could, look at Devonta Smith. He's not quite there yet, but I just don't know what that means on the NFL level. But man, he is fun to watch play because he brings it every game. You look at how he catches punts. I think he's still got a big punt return in him at some point.
And he almost had it
against Indiana. But what a neat player! What a treat to watch. And we're going to get to see him. 18. We got to see him for 4 years, and that's a rarity anymore.
To your point, until Dante Demas got hurt, he's the kind of guy that the pros is like. Well, does he do one thing? Yeah, he's big. He's big and fast. And he's like, wow, your eyes pop. And then he got that horrible, gruesome injury. I still haven't heard what
I heard it's not. I heard it could. I think Loxley hasn't updated it, but it sounded everything I read about it. It did not.
Oh, that was torque and everything. It was horrible on a kickoff return. Yeah. So, but that's what you're talking about of a guy, the eye popping one aspect of his play, where Jahan is more like Bobby Ingram. Bobby Ingram was not a first round choice. He was a second round choice.
Played forever. Played forever.
And because Jahan's not big and he's not powerful, especially, but he won't be pushed around. He's not incredibly fast, but he's fast enough.
Everyone underestimates his speed. He runs by everyone. You see people take bad angles on him all the time. It's amazing. It is amazing.
Yeah. But Bobby Ingram was all those things and had the incredible hands. Almost never dropped a pass.
Yeah.
So that would be the comp. And Bobby Ingram, I think, was 52, 54 pick in the draft back in '96. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
96.
But yeah, I'm just going to continue to watch him, and I can't wait to see him against the Iowa secondary. But you know what? Last year, Dave, he made some big plays. That the Iowa game last year was Penn State's 5th consecutive loss to start the season. That was the game where Franklin had finally seen enough. They started Will Levis. He got a touchdown on a long drive in the first half, and then he turned the ball over on 3 straight possessions. They went back to Clifford. Clifford and Dotson, I think, produced. I think he had a pretty nice game statistically against this defense, but Iowa was probably playing a little bit different because they had kind of a big lead on Penn State. But this game this does feel like a game that Franklin's already talking about it, Dave. They're aware of what Iowa does with turnovers and how they force turnovers. He's already talking about the running game and how it's going to need to protect his defense. Both sides are a little nervous about making the one big mistake in this game, because one big mistake might decide it.
Yeah, it reminds me of football 40 years ago, doesn't it? It's like one of those.
They're going to approach this game tight, man. These guys, coaching staffs are tight. I'm telling you.
They have shown the Iowa-Michigan game in '85 a few times in the last
10-7 or something.
Yeah, I mean it was Brent Musburger, and it came down to an Iowa field goal at the end, and it was Hayden Fry's first really good team.
Yeah,
I believe it was number 1 against number 3 or something at that point, and Iowa wins.
Who was the quarterback for Michigan? Was it John Wangler? Was that the quarterback's name?
One of those faceless, nameless guys. Yeah, the Bo.
It might have been Harbaugh. Harbaugh was the quarterback.
Nah, I don't know. 85. He might have been. Yeah, he might have been.
He was the Bears' first round pick in '86.
I think he was. No, he was the quarterback. You're right. But to that point, your question about Linderbaum and Mustipher was got a pretty interesting response, because he acknowledged
he knows what's up. That's gonna be a heavyweight title fight inside. I don't know who's walking away with the belt after that. Those guys are going to slam into each other.
Talk about Greco-Roman wrestling. That's going to be nasty.
Well, they both are wrestlers, Dave. I think PJ was a state champion at Maryland. I think Linderbaum was a state champ too. I'm telling you, I'm going to be watching the press box. I might not take my eyes off that matchup. They're not always going to run into each other because of the way Penn State does things. And, there's times when Linderbaum will actually pull to lead a sweep, which is, talk about rare. Like, you don't see that at a college level, a center pulling to lead a sweep. But when those two guys square off, man, PJ's got him on weight, but Linderbaum understands leverage and he is quick. So
he's just a relative kid. What is he, 20?
I think he played as a freshman, so he's experienced, but he is still, I think he's 21 or 22. He's been playing a lot of football for them.
I also thought it was interesting what Franklin said about you know what you're going to get with PJ. If he's supposed to be in the A gap, then he is going to be in the A gap. Well,
he's not a freelancer.
No, and what you need out of a nose guard. I mean, you got to have an anchor in there, a fire hydrant who cannot be uprooted, and that's important. That's what that guy's supposed to do. It was a pretty interesting press conference.
Yeah, I thought James did. I thought you ask him a question and he expounded on it. Like he didn't really hold back. He's really good. He's a master at saying just enough, but not being real critical of his guys, but getting his message across to the media who now know what he's trying to say. So he can be critical with actually saying critical words. And I think, to me, he when it comes to press conferences, he can work a press conference about as good as anyone, I think, in college football.
Yeah, and fans do not care. They don't care about.
I know, but I appreciate it.
They don't care. We appreciate it. But to me, it sends a positive message to the team when the coach is comfortable. Yeah. There were so many times when Joe used to be so anal in these press conferences. He'd get all worked up, and then they'd go lay an egg in Columbus, or Ann Arbor. I mean, they couldn't beat those teams. Remember how many losses in a row in Columbus or Ann Arbor? I mean, the last 15 years. It was ridiculous. I think that has some sort of effect. Now, you could say Franklin has not been great in Columbus or Ann Arbor either, but he has been very good against Iowa, which is a tough place to play in Iowa City at Kinnick, which is, we were talking about that too in the press conference, how if you've never been to Kinnick, and a lot of Penn State fans have had it's funny for a league that at first Penn State fans really didn't want to be in and didn't feel welcomed in. Now I think a lot of fans have taken a lot of the trips, and those who've been to Kinnick realize how cool it is because the field is so damn close to the stands. In fact, Joe Hermit once got one of his cameras ripped off because he put it. Was it a camera or what?
No, that was in Columbus, Dave, in 2017.
Oh, I thought it was in Iowa.
No, okay. It was Columbus.
Yeah, see, it fits, doesn't it? Much better that Ohio State fans would do that than Iowa fans. Iowa fans would never do that. Okay, well, forget that. But Joe has mentioned many times how close the fans are there and what a cool atmosphere it is because they're right on top of you. And I mean, it's like ballparks. It's the difference between like the LA Coliseum is like the Oakland Alameda Coliseum. It's acres of land there. And whereas this is more like Fenway Park, people right on to, or Tiger Stadium, where people right on top of you.
When you were talking about press conferences, you missed the boat. You could have talked about Billy O'Brien's press conferences in 2012, my all-time favorite, Dave. After they lost their opener to Ohio that year, remember the year that he had Gerald Hodges back fielding punts and the linebacker fumbled? I think Ohio kicked a field goal, and I think Ohio won by like 10. It's like 27-17. It was a hot day, and it was Bill O'Brien's first season as Penn State coach, first as a head coach at Penn State. And after the game, I'll never forget it. Neil Rudell led with his chin, and he asked Bill, he came into the press conference, and you could just tell he had the O'Brien scowl on. Neil goes, "Hey, Bill, did you maybe think that your team didn't have their legs? Did you maybe work them too hard?"
Oh no!
In August, I forgot. And I think Bill went, "No." He said, "No." It was either he just said no, or he said, "Hey, Neil, I really respect the question. No." It was one of those two happened, but I was like, "Oh man, that was great." When Bill didn't want to talk to you, boy, you knew. You better watch what you ask him.
Yeah, and you better not make a mistake either. One time, Marino Parasenso in Columbus asked Bruce Parkhill the first question, and he'd just gotten beat by like 3, and he didn't have a good team. It was the first trip into Columbus in like 93 or something, and he got him mixed up with his brother, Barry. He says, "What do you got to do to win, Bear?" And Bruce doesn't say anything. He looks at him. He goes, "It's Bruce." That was the answer. Next question.
Yeah. But anyway, I do think that James is a little bit more forgiving in press conferences than some other former Penn State coaches. So
yeah.
I know you're right. The fans don't care, but I got a kick out of some of the things that I still miss Bill O'Brien you just never knew what was going to happen. And when that eruption happened, man, no one was safe. It could have been after a practice. It could be after they upset Wisconsin.
We were just talking about when he.
What's that?
We were just talking about when he. We were just talking about. I was talking to Gross about when he. I know he did this on purpose. He called it Spacebook and Tweeter.
Yeah. You know what I don't like? Tweeter and Facebook.
You know what I hate? Twitter.
Yeah. All right. I see that Kaiser has entered the picture in Downingtown. Yeah. That's Dave's dog, the German Shepherd. I think that's our cue that this round of the Blue White Breakdown podcast has come to an end. We will be back a little bit later in the week to actually talk about Penn State and Iowa, make our picks, talk about some matchups and players we really are fascinated with.
You're gonna have a special segment on Urban Meyer, I know.
I'm just gonna wait. I'm letting you marinate on Urban Meyer for a couple more days, and after we get into the meat of Penn State, Iowa in our next podcast, I'm gonna tee you up, my man. You can
I think this is all you. I'll take stanky bar experiences for 100, Alex.
I do have an edge over you when it comes to dissecting what goes on inside a bar after the drinks are flowing. I can interpret body language better than you can. So maybe I will, my man. Maybe I will. All right. That's it. That's it, Dave. We'll be back next week. Tell your dog I asked about him, and we'll catch up with the fan base soon.
He's right here. See you everyone.